end of town there, a show they called it, wasn't a circus. They'd done a little bulldogging and the like, and they had an old black boy done it. I said, the first time any of us had ever seen any of that done. And he said, yeah, do you know who that? Said, he called his name. Said, that's the guy that started that. Said, he's the guy that started that bulldogging. I said, well, he could do a good job of it, all right.
It was Pickett. Was his name Bill Pickett?
Pickett,
yep.
Pickett, yeah. He used to tie a handkerchief over their mouth and jump off and grab that bull by the nose and throw him them days. Boy, you can turn him a somerset.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sir, what's your full name?
All right.
What's your full name?
Ralph Cleo Dawson.
Ralph
C. Dawson.
This is December 28th.
Sure is. This whole year's gonna be gone.
Yep. 1988.
Yeah.
My name is Joe Todd.
Bill Todd.
Joe Todd.
Huh?
Joe Todd.
Joe Todd.
Yeah.
Joe Todd.
And this is an interview with Mr. Ralph C. Dawson in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Mr. Dawson, where were you born?
I was born in Des Moines, Iowa. I brought my folks to Oklahoma in 1900 when I was a year old. I was born in '99.
Des Moines, Iowa. And when's your birthday?
October 30th.
1899.
1899.
Who was your father?
John Harvey Dawson. He was granddad. I believe there was about 4 of them boys. He was born on a ranch out in western Nebraska where his family was raised up. And 4 of my sisters was born out there. I was born, they moved to Des Moines, Iowa when I was born.
And who was your mother?
Ella Beasley. She was from Illinois.
Beasley?
That's right.
She was from Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah, she been an Irishman all her life. And she lived it.
Do you know why your father's family moved to Iowa from Nebraska?
Then what?
You know why your father's family moved to Iowa from Nebraska?
No, I don't. I never did. Grandpa, they was all out there together on this ranch, and they all moved into Des Moines, Iowa, and then they all moved down here to Edmond. I don't know why. There was my grandfather and my dad and 2 of his brothers. They all moved down, and 2 sisters. They all moved to Edmond when they come down there.
You know why they moved to Oklahoma?
Wanted to get in this new country.
New country.
Yeah.
How'd the family move to Oklahoma?
They come on a train. I think they said they had a full boxcar stuff they brought, and then they all rode a train in.
Did you know your grandparents?
Didn't know 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty well. Granddaddy used to do a little cowboying for him along all the time.
What was his name?
Isaac. I don't know what his middle name was. Isaac Dawson.
Was he in the Civil War?
No, I don't think so.
And you say he was a rancher and a farmer?
Yeah, he was a rancher out there, and then when he come out here to Arcadia and bought a half section of land after they moved to Edmond there about a year later. Well, they come out there and bought that half section, built a house out there, and moved out there. And my folks moved out there. They got a piece of property out there. The town was Nash then, but just a little old wide place in the road, just a store and a post office. All there was there.
Who ran the store?
I don't know. I knew the man that run the post office, Cap Lee. He was an old captain in the Civil War. He was a postmaster, but I don't remember. I've heard that name too, but I didn't pay any attention to him.
Why did they change the name from Nash to Arcadia?
The railroad come in there in 1907 when they put the railroad through there, where they moved the town down next to the railroad there and started the town down there. And I guess the railroad named it Arcadia.
Who was Nash? Who was Nash?
Nash.
Yeah, who was?
He had the store up there in the little town, what they call Nash, there when it first started there, where Arcadia is now. Well, he had a store and had the post office in it. I know us kids would be over there, and my granddad bought this half section of land right along the north edge where the town is now. And the house was just about across the road from this store. Us kids would be over there, and we was little kids, and the stage used to come in there from, I think, down around Chandler. Used to come in there and water their horses there, and then they'd come on through Guthrie and go to Kingfisher, and then about 2 days later they'd come back through. Used to get a kick out of going and watching the stagecoach come in and go out.
You ever ride that stage?
No, I never did ride the stage.
What route did that stage follow? Where did it go? And
It come, this and here, if I remember right, it come from Chandler and up to there, Arcadia, and they'd water their horses there, and then they'd come on into Kingfisher. Then they'd come back the next day or two, well, they'd come back from Kingfisher to Chandler. I don't know where else it went. It might have went to other places, but
where did they water the horses in Arcadia? Was there a stage stop there?
yeah. Yeah, I was up there at this town where the store is, Nash. He had a well drilled there. That's where they used to water their horses.
Was it a passenger stage, or was it mail, or?
Yeah, they carried the mail and passengers. There'd be a few people ride it now and then.
What kind of house did you live in around Arcadia?
We just had a straight wooden clapboard house, I guess, and then my dad finally put siding on it in later years.
You talked about, I just heard you mention the snow, the cold weather around here, and going rabbit hunting. Tell me about going rabbit hunting in the snow.
Yeah, that snow used to get pretty deep. I've seen it foot deep and better just several times. Us, be a couple, three of us kids would run around there together some, and we'd get us wrap our feet and toe sacks and get us a club and go out there and jump a rabbit. Well, you wouldn't go far. He'd dart in that snow, and then we'd get him. You know, he couldn't run in it. He'd jump up and start, and then he'd get in that snow, and we'd clobber him with that. We'd bring in 2 or 3 apiece.
I guess your mother cooked them, didn't she?
Oh yeah, yeah. We clean them and hang them out on the north side of the house and let them freeze, and then take them down the next morning and bring them in and thaw them. And boy, you talk that old hot biscuits and gravy and that rabbit was mighty good eating.
You hunt squirrels too in the wintertime?
Not very much. We never done a lot of squirrel hunting. We always kind of admired those squirrels. Us kids used to play with them a lot. They were squirreled everywhere. Yeah, a young squirrel though was good eating. They'd get one once in a while. That squirrel. They like cottontail the best.
When did you start the school?
I started there at Arcadia. And then in 1910, my mother run a hotel there when Arcadia started then. Well, my mother run the hotel there a couple of years, and then she taken over the old Broadway Hotel in Edmond in 1910. We moved to Edmond, and we just lived in Edmond 1910 and 11 again. And she run the old Broadway Hotel there at 2nd and Broadway, where it used to be. I was in the 4th grade when we went up there.
What was the name of the hotel in Arcadia?
I don't know. They just called it the Arcadia Hotel.
Did you help your mother there? Did you do any work in the hotel? Did you help out?
No, I just lived there and went to school.
What chores did you do in the farm, in the ranch?
We always had chores. Always had to get up. Dad always had a bunch of horses, and then he went to get buying young mules and raising them up, and breaking them. We'd always have a bunch of horses and mules to feed, and then Granddad had quite a corral and stuff over there where he lived, and they'd come up here to Edmond. They'd ship these wild horses from out west in here, carload of them and unload them here, and they'd sell them. You'd buy them anywhere from $5 to $8, $15 somewhere. And good Western horses. And my granddad always rode a white horse, an old white horse he had for years. And of course it'd be my other uncle lived over there, and he had a boy about my side, and we rode horses. It'd be about 5 of us ride from Arcadia over here to Edmond and to that auction, and they'd buy 4 or 5 of them wild horses. Granddad, they'd get them out there and get them ready, and Granddad would start off with that white horse. We'd get behind them, and they'll follow a white horse, and mule will follow a white horse through fire. They'd take them out there, and then they'd break them to ride and break them to...
How do you break a wild horse?
Just get him. Well, wild horses, you couldn't just turn them out in the open because they'd run away with you. But just get them in a big corral and just get on them and let them buck themselves out. They'll finally give up and gentle down. Then it takes several rides to gentle them down. But when they find out they can't win, well, they'll gentle right down. Make good horses.
How many horses did you break?
Oh Lord, I don't know. I've rode a many one. Used to had a lot down there at Arcadia. Later years covered about, I guess about 5 acres, right there in town. Anybody had a bad horse or anything, or a mule or something, they'd bring him in there, and there'd be some of us riding. You get 50 cents to $1 for riding one them days. They'd ride them there. Gosh, we used to ride. They'd a lot of those little Spanish mules there in later years, and they used to ride them little devils. They was fun to ride. The mule won't run into anything when you're riding him, but a horse gets scared, he'll run into a fence or a tree or anything, but a mule won't hurt himself at all. He'll go around everything.
I've always heard that a mule is smarter than a horse.
Well, they are. And they're different. Now, you can take an old mule, feed him of a morning, all he wants to eat, grain, ride him all day, water him at noon, and then bring him in of an evening and just feed him all of, just fill his box up with grain. But you can't do a horse that way. A horse will founder. And he'll eat what he wants, and when he gets what he wants, if there's any left, he'll leave it. A horse will stand there and try to eat it all up, and then they'll get foundered and sick. But a mule, you can just pour a sack of feed out there, and he'll eat what he wants and go on about his business. Yeah, they're smart. Dad'd have a bunch of them young mules in a lot. We'd be in there feeding them or something, come out. By golly, if you didn't wire that gate down, first thing you know, and you got out of sight and look around, there'd be a mule out. They'll rub that gate open. They'd get on that and just rub that gate open. We'd always got to where we'd wire it down where they couldn't open it. And they won't do it while you're there looking at them, but the minute you get out of sight, well, then they'll do what they want to do.
What kind of crops did you raise in the farm?
Well, they went to raising cotton later years, but first just Capricorn and corn, and then they went to growing a little wheat in later years. Everybody then, mostly cotton. Colored folks moved in out there, quite a few of them out there, and they raised cotton. But most of the crops before that was just corn and Capricorn and maize and stuff. Maize was a good crop.
Did you plow with a walking plow or a riding plow?
Oh, I plowed with both kinds. What little I ever plowed. Old walking plow, yeah, I plowed with them a lot. My dad never did farm a lot. My granddad didn't. They generally just run cattle and horses, mules, but they'd have to raise their own feed because you couldn't buy feed. Them days where you had to raise your own feed. But yeah, I done quite a bit of plowing.
How many acres did you plow in one day with a walking plow?
Oh gosh, I don't know, 14-inch plow. I guess a man plow a couple acres a day, he'd know he done a day's work.
How about a sulky plow? How much could you?
I don't know, I never did do much of that. As I got a little older, I worked in the hay. I went to growing hay then, went planting a little alfalfa. And I worked in the hay run the mower, rake, then they bale it by hand with a team of horses turn the baler, you know, the team. And when I was a little kid, I'd get 25 cents a day in my dinner to drive them horses around that baler there, baling that hay.
How many wagons you have in the farm?
We just had a couple.
Just a couple?
Yeah.
Remember what brand they were?
No, the old Studebaker used to be one of the best, but they were several different kinds. I don't remember the names of them now, but I remember that old Studebaker. You could buy a Studebaker wagon while you was doing pretty good.
How much they cost in those days?
I really don't know. I imagine around $30, $40, something like that, to buy a good wagon.
Did that include the wagon sheet? Did that include the wagon sheet?
No, that's just the wagon. Double trees and neck yoke. You know, you'd have to buy your own other things you carried with it. Well,
tell me about the maintenance you had to do on the wagon to keep it running.
Main thing was just keep it greased. And then that steel rim around the wheels would get dry real hot summer while they'd get loose and they would come off. And they did while sometimes your wheel, well, if you had a load on, your wheel would break down. And they used to take them and there's a little old creek or anything, they'd always run that old wagon down there and let it set in there for about an hour and then roll it over a little and just keep on till they soaked all them wheels up, and then it was good for several days.
What kind of wood made the best wagon wheels?
Oak, I think, was what they used most altogether.
And what kind of grease did you grease the axles with?
Just plain old axle grease, old black axle grease they called it.
Now, how do you grease the axles on a wagon? What do you have to do?
Well, just tell you, it's got that big nut on there to hold it on. You know, it's on a shaft, just a sloping shaft down, and then there's a big nut there with a flange on it that you tighten it, put on there and tighten it up to hold the wheel on. And you just take that off and just pull your wheel out a little and smear a little grease on there, up and down. Now reach under there with a paddle and then push it back on. You don't take the wheel clear off. We didn't have no jacks or nothing like that. Just pull it out, and then you could just slip the wheel back on it.
How often do you have to grease the axles?
Oh, if you was using a wagon regular, you'd have to grease it about once a month at least.
Now, how do you take that nut off?
It had a regular pin that went through, held your double trees down, had a handle on it about that long, about as big as your thumb, went down through there. Then it had a two prong just to go on that square nut on there, about that wide, about that big, to turn that off out of your wagon wrench. And you use it on your double trees there when you wasn't greasing your wagon and like that held the double trees on.
What do you put on the harness, the leather, to keep the leather soft and good shape?
Well, they use lard. The best thing, I still use it on my boots yet, just unsalted butter. Used to churn that old butter, you know, and not before they put any butter on it, just get you a little of it and keep it back. Take it out and grease your boots. We used to use it on our saddles. I was an old kid, cousin that I run with, he had a ranch out in New Mexico. Several years back, we'd go out and visit with him a lot. And I went in his saddle room out there one time. He had a big ranch out there right up in the mountains. He didn't have much for him to eat, but he had lots of ground. And I said, what are you using on your saddles now? Neat foot? Oh, hell no, that'll ruin leather. You know what we used to use? And I said, well, yeah, we used unsalted butter. He said, I still use it. I'll get the boys out here and said, we just grease the dickens out of them saddles, and they'll last too.
Where do you get unsalted butter now?
You can buy it at the store.
You can?
I generally go over there and buy it. They come 4 cubes for a pound, you know, quarter pound. You can just buy 1 cube. I bring it home, put it in a little plastic bag, and put it in the refrigerator, and then when I want to grease my boots or shoes or anything, well, I just go get that and smear it on there and let it set, just so you can set it out in the sun and let it soak in. Then take them out, rub 'em right good, and by golly, that old leather just stays as soft and pliable. Yeah, I know a lot of guys that still, I believe old Fred O told me he still used unsalted butter on his boots.
Tell me about moving down to Edmond, 1910. How'd you move?
We moved in wagons. Yeah, it took about 3 or 4 wagon loads to get all the stuff over there.
How long did that trip take?
Well, you could drive it in a couple hours if the road was good. You make with a load it'd take about 2.5, 3 hours. You make 3 miles an hour with a wagon loaded, and them roads them days you was doing pretty good.
What shape were the roads in those days?
Well, they were mostly just trails. They weren't graded or anything. Just was bare where they'd keep the grass killed out. It had enough travel on it to keep the grass killed out, and you just follow them trails. This trail from Arcadia to Edmond, that road right north of first section line north of Edmond there runs along with the college there. What the heck? Can't think of it right off. That was the main drag through there them days, and then when they put the highway in, well then they went over there on 2nd Street now.
How bad were the roads when it rained? Can you travel the roads pretty good?
Oh, they'd get bad. Of course, there wasn't no bridges very much. Well, there wasn't no bridges at all in the early days. And if the creeks wasn't too high, well, you just cross them. Not, well, you just have to wait till they went down a little so you could cross. You could swim a horse across, but you couldn't with a wagon. You had to have, they had to get a little footing before they could cross to do any good.
Whenever you swim a horse across a river, how do you get across with the horse? What do you do?
Just jump him off in there. You just swim like a dog.
You stay in the saddle when he swims?
Yeah. Yeah, just stay in the saddle. Yeah, I know. I left the farm or left the oil fields in '46. We bought a farm out northwest Edmond. I told my wife, I said, I'm tired of going. The company I was with that move us every little bit. We went to the oil fields in 1919 up in the Quay Merrimack field. That was rough old days then.
You remember when they moved the capital to Oklahoma City?
I just remember hearing about it, yeah. I used to know the old boy, Vance Luckenbill, lived out here. He said he was running American Express and he come and got the seal, brought the seal down here to the courthouse. That was where the capital was. And he didn't know what it was, but he said then that night they moved it on to Oklahoma City, and that was it. He always said they stole that seal.
How many years did you go to school?
I quit in the 8th grade.
Quit in the 8th grade?
Yeah, I was driving a team. I was a mule skinner. The 66 highway was coming through then. I could get a chance I could get a job driving a team up here for $2 a day. And that was 10-hour days, wasn't no 8-hour days then. So I quit school. I was just practically up to where I was going to graduate out of the 8th grade, so I just quit. My dad is that old belief, if you learn to read and write, you can learn a trade and you're all right. So I drove a team of mules there, and I drove a while, and I got a job driving the county team. The old boy asked me if I wanted to drive them county. They had a pair of big old mules there that was hard to handle. He said there'd been 100 guys driving them. So he said, I'll give you $1.25, $2.25 a day if you'll drive them for me. So I quit them and went driving mules for him then.
Have any trouble with that team of mules?
Not much, no. They'd want to do anything, you just, well, get a hold of their tails as the lines, because they just put the bit in their mouth and just hold it in their teeth and take you right along with them. But if you treat them halfway decent and they know you're boss, well then they settle down. I didn't have any trouble with them. So many people didn't know how to drive them, well, they just do what they wanted to do, you know.
What year did you work on 66?
66?
Yeah,
Let's
the
see.
highway.
about 1914, I believe it was, something like that, 1915.
What'd you do with the team of mules? What kind of work were you doing on the highway?
I was driving a team on a wheeler, that's just a big cart with a big shovel on it. They called it a wheeler. They drop it down and fill it full of dirt. It'd hold a lot of dirt and then pull it up, and then you could haul it 2 or 3 miles or just wherever you was going. I drove a wheeler team most of the time, and then when I went to driving for the county down there, or the state, well, then I drove a rock team, dragging the rocks. So they'd blast the rocks out and then put chains around them, and we'd drag them down to the low places, and then they'd cover them with dirt.
In those years, were they paving 66 at that time?
No, it was just dirt road.
Just dirt road.
Yeah, and then later on, they bricked it from the Capitol building, in front of the Capitol building, up to down here at the junction where the 35 crosses old 66. They bricked it out to there in later years. They had a big old black boy. It kept 4 or 5 men busy just carrying him brick. He'd get right down on his knees and lay them brick. He had to lay them flat, together. And that's the way he'd lay them. By golly, that old boy could lay more brick.
They put mortar between the bricks?
Huh?
They put mortar between those bricks?
Yeah, and they'd run mortar over them.
Yeah.
And they'd set them up.
Mm-hmm. So did you work in that section of 66 by the Capitol building?
Did you say, did I?
Yeah, did you?
No, I left here in 1919 and went to the oil fields.
What section did you work on of 66?
Down here from about a mile east of Edmond there, past the junction where 35 crosses, about a mile, about 2 miles east. I worked all through there, over to what they call the Bohemian Hill. And
Did 66 today, did it pretty well follow the old highway?
yeah, yeah, it followed the whole highway just pretty well all the way.
In Arcadia, who built the round barn there?
That was Bill Oder who built that. He was a big farmer there. Well, he owned about a half section of land, and he joined my granddad had this half section, then Bill Oder had this half section. So when the railroad come right down through the bottom there, well, it's on Bill Oder, and some of the little of it was on my granddad. And they going to start the town, and they said, well, we'll give 40 acres. I don't think they give 40 acres, but they let them survey 40 acres each there to build the town on, and then that's where Bill Oder built this round barn there. They built the depot, and then he built the round barn right close to it. He owned that land. They built that out of native oak. Yeah, Bill Oder was quite a man.
I heard they used to have dances in that barn.
Oh yeah.
Meetings.
He didn't, because Bill Oder was a very religious man, and he lived it. He'd go out here and work as hard as you would and take a drink with you, and that's all of that, but by golly, he was a religious man. They didn't have any dance as long as he owned it, but he went down east of town there and built him a home down there right east of the edge of Arcadia, and then he sold a round barn. My daddy-in-law bought it at one time. There, he owned it for about, let's see, he bought that in about 1920, let's see, he bought it in about 21 or 2 years, 1922, I think it was. He owned it for several years. That bought 40 acres with it. That was quite a barn. Yeah, they used to have dances there. That flooring, that was just regular flooring. And they put alfalfa hay on flooring, on wood, and it makes it slick, and they'd always have hay stored in the attic. And then the summertime, when they'd have dances there, get that hay used down some. And then when they went to baling the hay, well, they had plenty of room. Yeah, they had lots of dances there. It's quite a place.
Statehood Day, 1907. Do you remember that day when Oklahoma became a state?
I just remembered. I didn't remember anything about it. It happened up there. Old Bill Murray wrote the Constitution up here at Guthrie, him and some of the other legislators. Yeah, that was.
Was there a big celebration in Guthrie? Or I mean in Arcadia on
Do
state?
what?
Was there a big celebration in Arcadia on Statehood Day?
No, they never did. Never did have much of a celebration there any time that I know of.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Bill Pickett. When did you first see him?
Bill Pickett.
He's the guy that did the bulldog, the black guy.
Yeah. Well, that place there, that little show they had there, come in there. He was just going good with it then. I guess he was part owner of that show. And then from there, I don't believe they went to Edmond, but I believe they went to up north. I know I seen him one time at the 101 Ranch at a rodeo years later. Up this side of Ponca City, you know, the old ranch, the old 101 Ranch. Bill Pickett was performing there.
When's the first time you went to Guthrie?
When I went to Guthrie?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember. It's long. Oh, I guess I was 10, 12 years old before I would come to Guthrie. We always went to Edmond. We had as our closest way. And then there's a little town in Luther there, and Arcadia and Jones. We used to go to them.
What did Arcadia look like in the early days, the town?
Well, there's just one main street there. Come up from the depot there, just come north a couple of blocks. And they built up a little on both sides, just little old grocery stores and things like that, and a hotel there. My mother run it for 2 or 3 years there, and then she went to Edmond and run that and run one over there. And it's just a little old town. Just one main street was all they had. A couple of grocery stores. Pool hall. Of course, they'd always have a pool hall. If you had 2 or 3 buildings together them days, you'd have to have a pool hall for recreation.
Were there a lot of Czechs around Arcadia?
Do I?
Were there a lot of Czechs, Czechoslovakians?
Not that I know of.
Or were they mainly Germans in that area?
They were a few. Just few.
You mentioned recreation. On the farm, what'd you do for recreation?
Oh, us kids would climb trees or ride a horse or something, and an old outlaw horse or something we could get cornered up. Yeah, we used to, and we'd have, what we used to do one time, my granddad he always run quite a lot of cattle in the wintertime after Bill Oder got farming and going a little wheat, but he'd have wheat pasture, and of course they'd thrash their wheat in one big stack, the straw. Then they'd turn the cattle in on the wheat in the wintertime, and then they'd get their dry feed out of the straw pile. And that thing would be as big as a 2-story house sometime. And cattle would eat back in there. Well, they'd go, I've seen them back in there at 12, 15 feet, where they'd just eat it out and keep it going back in there. And Granddad always rented some wheat pasture from Bill Oder and moved a bunch of cattle down there. Generally steers or like, and us kids used to slip down there and we'd catch them in there eating. 4 or 5 of us kids, we could hem that hole up in there and catch one and get on him. And big old steers, well, young yearlings, short yearlings. Then turn him loose, go out of there, he'd go. He'd throw you generally a little ways. But you could jump off of him anytime you wanted to, because we just hung on to him.
Ever work on the cattle drives?
On what?
Cattle drives?
No, I never did.
What about World War I?
Yeah, well, I claimed that I ended World War I. I had to register for the draft on October 30th, 1918. And by golly, in November then, well, they signed a truce. I always said them Germans seen my name on there, and they got scared and signed a truce. No, it ended just about a month and a half after I signed up for it.
So you didn't have to go then?
No.
Yep.
No. But I did my mother run the post office there in later years.
In Edmond?
in Arcadia.
Arcadia.
And the old boy, there was 2 routes out of there. And Mr. Dowell had the 1 route, and then his boy Clyde had the 2nd route out of there. And that was when the first car or 2 we saw, 1910 or 11, I think we saw a car or 2. And then 1 or 2 bought cars. Well, Clyde Dowell wanted to make a motor route out of his mail route. It's 26 miles, I believe. And he finally got a motor route out of it, and he drove the car on it then for about a year. That was in about 1913, 14, somewhere along there. And then he decided that he wanted to have them put in a garage. You know, he was a pretty good mechanic. He could work on them old farm tools and like. And he made a motor route out of this and drove his car. So he talked to my mother, and I wasn't draft age then, and I said, why don't you get Ralph to, why can't we get him to take this route over so I can go ahead and build me a garage? And they got permission to let me carry the mail until they hold an election, you know, or not election, but a school, and see if you passed the grades, well, then you could be appointed. So they appointed me then just temporarily, and I went and I had a team of ponies and a new buggy. I just bought this buggy, Emerson buggy. It had what they call a 1-man top. You could let the top down by staying in the seat, and that was something new them days. I had that, and a team of little buckskin ponies. So they wanted me to take that route over, and I said, heck, that car then cost a little over $300. So old Clyde said, listen, if you'll take that route over, I know an old boy out here southwest of town, a farmer that bought a Ford. I think it was a 14. And he hit a stump with it and sprung the axle just a little, and it's hard for him to steer it, and he wants to sell it. And he said he hadn't drove it, but he hadn't had it but just 2 or 3 months. And he said, you can, I think the new cost then $376. New touring car Ford then. So he said, I believe I can buy that from him for about $3 1/4, and I know what's the matter with it, and I'll fix it for nothing for you if you'll take my route over. So I agreed to do that. So we got the car. I sold my team and ponies, and I had an old roping horse, old John. He was an old Texas Redbone horse, they called him then. I don't know what breed he was. He was Texas Redbone. And I sold all of them and bought this car, and I carried the mail, and I've been broke about ever since I had cars. I carried the mail about almost 2 years. Gosh, it is no roads. Come a rain, I'd have to go. I could ride it in a horse in 4 hours. Or in a car, when the roads was good, I could make it in 4 hours, and horseback I could make it in 5. But if I had to take a buggy, well, it'd take me 7, 8 hours to make it in a buggy.
Where was the route? Where did it go?
Went out of Arcadia north, up put near the Meridian over here, and then come back this way. Covered 26 miles there in kind of a circle. Went back there. Yeah, I got loose from that route then in 1919, and we went to the oil field. I got married in 1918. And wife and me went to the oil fields.
Let me ask, when you saw your first car, what'd you think? When you saw the first one?
I thought that was a heck of a thing. A guy took come in there one time, and folks were running the hotel and ate dinners. He had an Overland Touring. That was a heck of a looking thing, and he took 2 or 3 of us boys a little ride around a couple of blocks. I just thought, dang, that thing, I don't know whether we'd want one of them or not. How would you stop it? You'd have to jump out to stop it. We didn't know any different. Yeah, that was the first car I remember seeing was an Overland.
What'd you have your car worked on?
There, this Clyde Dowell, he put in a garage there.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and he'd do little things on my car if needed it.
Where'd you get your gasoline for it?
He had gasoline, had got it in a barrel. Cost, let's see, it just burned white gasoline. It seemed to me like it was 6 cents a gallon. But I couldn't make very much. I got $123 a month for driving that route every day, and that sometimes my car expenses run $8-10 a month. Other expenses, I didn't like it, so I finally got out of it. I carried about a year and a half, I think it was. But during the war there, I'd come in, I'd get in at noon if the roads was good. Well, I'd get back in by 12 or 12:15, put my mail up. Then they took all these boys from up in our vicinity there down to Choctaw to give them examinations for the Army. And I'd take 4 of them down there. I'd get $1 a piece for hauling 4 down there in the afternoon. I'd done that quite a lot as long as the roads was good, but when it come a rain, well, of course, you couldn't do that. I seen a lot of them old boys examined, mostly colored boys up in our country there then.
Did most of those boys come back from the war?
Do what?
Did most of those boys come back from the war?
Yeah, one old boy, George Kennedy, was one of the nicest old boys. Of course, he's older than me, but everybody liked him. He got killed over there, but he had 2 brothers that come back.
What was his name?
George Kinney.
George Kinney?
George Kennard, not Kinney. Kennard, yeah, George Kennard. Yeah, I guess there was several of them got killed there, but I just knew them.
Yeah. Did you do any work to support the war effort? You know, they had the bomb drives and in the war.
No, I didn't do nothing like that. But we'd get a call card for examination or a call to the Army on my route. I'd have to deliver it in person, whether it was a half a mile off of the route or a mile off of the route. I'd have to take it to them and deliver it to them in person. You couldn't put it in a box.
Yeah.
Let them get it. You had to give it to them.
Where'd you meet your wife?
I met her. See, she was going to school up here at Guthrie. Well, she'd growed up out there in North Town. I knew her brother-in-law and her older sister. I got acquainted with her. Well, she went to school there at Arcadia. I think she finished the 7th and 8th grade, and then she went back home and then come up to Guthrie and went to a little old college right down there on about 1st Street. They had a little old school there, that kind of a college like. She went there a while, and I come up here and used to drive my car up here and see her a few times while she was up here. And we got married then in 1918.
What's her name?
Mabel.
What was her maiden name?
Holbrook. Mabel Holbrook.
Mabel Holbrook. Why did you go to the oil fields?
Well, here about, I was only getting this $126 in furnishing the car, and they said they'd pay you. Roustabouts gets $135 a month in the oil field, single-handed. So, boy, we wanted to go to the oil field, so we took out and went up there. And I went to work for a gas company.
Where'd you move?
Went to Quay. Had us up northeast of Cushing, about 18 mile, I believe it was. County line run, Pawnee County over here and Payne County here, and Main Street of Quay was the county line through there, just a little country town. I forget what they used to call it now. They named it Quay after the field went in there, and they just drilled all around that place. Every block or two in town, they drill a well on it. Everybody lived in boxcar houses then. You could have one built for, cost you $275 to get a house built.
And what's a boxcar house?
Just a straight house, you know, with about 2, some of them had a little money to build 3 rooms straight, but generally just 2 rooms, about the size of a boxcar, and an oval top on it, just made out of 1x12s, and then it wasn't finished inside. You could live right in there, get natural gas and everything, no lights, there wasn't no electricity them days. The company had one there in Quay, and I went to work for them, well, they let me live in it, and didn't cost me nothing for gas. And there was a water line there. The Noble Oil Company had a water line went pretty close to the house out there in the road, so they made me a connection on it to get water to use, because the water in the wells in Quay wasn't no good. There's sulfur or something in it. So we had it put in ice there. We lived there. Then they moved me to Yale, and then from Yale down to Gano, down to Cushion, and then back to Yale. And I quit them in 28 and went to work for the city service gas company.
What'd you do as a roustabout? What does a roustabout do?
Oh, just generally do all the well pulling. They have to pull them rods out. The well quit pumping or something go wrong with it, where you got to pull them sucker rods all out and then pull the tube, maybe pull the tubing and work on that. And then you do just whatever jobs come up around there, the little connection work, or maybe cutting weeds if nothing else. I never did roustabout for the oil company. I worked for this gas company altogether, and I just had to take care of my gas. I took care of the town of Quay there for gas about 2 years. I'd have to get up in the morning about 5 o'clock. There wasn't no automatic regulators or anything, and get up about 5 o'clock and go down and put a weight on the regulator so the gas town would have a little more pressure. And then the schoolhouses would light up. They'd fire up their places. Well, that took more gas, and then at 9 o'clock at night I'd have to take that weight off. And done that for several years.
How's that regulator work?
Just a valve in there. The gas comes in here, right, built right in the line, and this thing has got just like a kind of a valve in a car, seats, and it's got a long handle on it. And you put a weight out there and raise that valve up a little and let more gas through, and you take that off, well, it'll take all the weights off and it'll just shut completely off. And then they went to making them automatic then, to where they'd regulate their own gas. Set the pressure at a certain pressure, and then it'll just stay that way. That was awful handy. That didn't happen until several years later.
What's the difference between the rig that you drill an oil well with as opposed to a gas well? What's
None.
the difference?
Wasn't none. You get sometimes you'd get gas before you got oil, and then a lot of times you'd get gas and separate it from the oil, and you could use both of them.
Did you worked on the cable tool rigs?
I never worked on the rig, but I worked around them with the gas. I used to have to. Them days they didn't have no lights in the rigs to drill at night. They worked 12-hour shifts, you know. And they'd put gas flares out there, little gas flares flare up there around the rig, out about 20 feet around, about 3 of them, and that would light the rig up, and they could work in there. And I used to have to check them and maybe go out there at night, and they was paying us for three or four flares, whatever it was, and sometimes they'd add a few more on it and not tell you anything about it and use more gas, and then I'd have to watch that, and if they did, well, I'd charge them more.
Ever have a blowout on those wells?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them blow out, and especially the company moved me to the city here in 1930, and the old Oklahoma City field, old Mary Sudik, that was the big well of the world.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I've seen it there several times, flowing. They finally got it checked.
What about, ever have a blowout on a gas well you were working on?
Yeah, once in a while they'll hit that sand, that old thing of plunging, you know, penetrate that sand, and if they haven't got it rigged to where they can pull out right quick and shut the valve, put a valve on top of it, put your cable down through it. Well, you could pull out and close it up, but sometimes you'd hit a pocket of gas, and yeah, they used to have trouble with that, and then they'd have to go in there and pump mud in there and seal it off and fix it up, and then open it up again. That gas is in pockets, well, just like oil. Oil runs in a big pocketed vein, and gas the same way. Generally, gas is on top of the oil.
When a gas well catches on fire, what do you do?
Oh, it'll burn. Yeah, generally, if they don't have a valve on it, well, they'll just have to go in there and just snuff it out. They used to have crews. One old boy there, he got famous by putting out oil well fires. He was a big shot. I forget what his name was.
Red Adair?
Now, I just don't remember his name. I know I was around in the field there where he shut several off during they'd blow out or something. He lived in Texas last time I heard about it.
Yeah. I think I read Adair.
Adair,
Yeah.
it kind of sounds familiar, like that might have been him. Yeah, that's quite a thing.
In the old days when the gas well caught on fire, how'd you put it out?
Well, if we had a valve on it, well, I'd just get down under it and close that valve up there and stay below it. Then they have a pipe in it 3 or 4 feet. Or on them big wells like they got here at the city, they was 6,000 feet. Them was the biggest wells in the world at that time, deepest. And they'd have a long rod out there about 30, 40 feet with a big wheel in it about the size of a buggy wheel or something for you to turn, and you could shut that valve off out there because you couldn't get up there close to it. It'd put your ear out, used to, and then we'd have to open them up every once in a while. If we had a bunch of gas wells, they'd collect a little water. We'd have to open them up and blow them to the air and get the water off of them and then shut them in. We generally always wore them old helmets in the wintertime, and we'd put big pieces of cotton in our ears and pull them things over it and then put another cap on top of that, because that'll deafen you. Shut them things in or open them up. It made a lot of noise. You could hear them blowing for 2 or 3 miles all the time.
And what company did you work for in 1919?
I worked for the city service gas.
Oh, was that the first company you worked for?
No, the first one I worked for, 1919.
Yeah.
No, I worked for the Cushion Gas Company, Old Creek County Gas Company is what it was. Originally it started in Cushion. And then they come up there to Quay, had the Yale Natural Gas Company, that was the distributors in town, and then they had the Quay Company there too. Yeah, that's
And you went to work for city service in what year?
1927.
1927.
I went to work for them.
Why'd you go to work for them?
Well, I had got a job just testing meters around testing wells and meters. That was better than having regulators and other things to work with. And they just leave you in a district a year. You'd give you a big district, maybe. One time there, I moved me to Newkirk, and I had K County, and then I had some wells up in Kansas I'd have to take care of. They give you a big district, leave you in there a year, and then they'd move you to another district. They'd move me on to work for them in Bartlesville. Went to Bartlesville, then they sent me to Drumright, and we lived in Cushion a year, back to Drumright, and they moved me to Newkirk, and then they moved me to Bartlesville, to Oklahoma City. I worked for them 8 or 10 years, something like that.
When did you first go to Bartlesville?
About, let's see, first time I was ever up there was about 1926, I think it was.
What did you think of the town, Bartlesville?
I thought it was quite a town. It was quite a town then, too. It's lively. There's a lot going on, and the company's headquarters was in Bartlesville, too. Phillips Petroleum was just starting to go big in there then. It's a real town. I've met Frank Phillips when he started the Phillips Oil Company, and he operated years there. He was a nice fellow. I used to see him once in a while, and I was with my boss one day there, and he introduced me to him. He was quite a guy. They had the Masonic Lodge, I believe, had an 8-story building there, and the gas company our company I worked for had 5 stories of it. And then Phillips had the rest of it, and then they finally built them a big building of their own there. Yeah, we had our own telephone and everything there from the city service.
Who was head of city service? Who was head of city service in those years?
Let's see, what was that old boy's name?
Was it Kidd?
No, what in the heck was his name? I never seen him, but we used to hear of him. He was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I believe, and New York City was his headquarters them days. But at one time they had streetcar systems, and they just had a little bit of everything at the city service company. What in the heck was his name? I can't call it now. It's been so long since I thought of it. But he was a big shot.
And how long did you work for city service?
I worked for them up till 30. Let's see, 33.
33.
Yeah, and then 30, 31. Because then I was living there in the city, and I went to work for the ITIO. They was a big producer there, and they was the one that started that field there in Oklahoma City. And I worked for them then as a gas dispatcher there for, see, 31 to about 36. And I quit them and come up in Kansas to, what the heck was his name? Lives in Topeka yet, run for president one time.
Alf Landon?
Alf Landon. He had a little company up there, and Walt Fees was the man that was operating for him, but Alf Landon owned him. And he hired me and we moved to Oskaloosa, Kansas. They were drilling just spudding wells, 1,500 feet, get pretty good gas wells, and they'd take it into, was pipelining the gas into Kansas City. We was northwest of Kansas City there, about 30 miles. Yeah, we drilled a lot of them little wells. I had my own crew, laid my own pipeline and everything there, and I worked for them. The winters got me, my God, it'd be zero there from 1st of September till the 1st of May. We stayed there 2 years, and they built this big Douglas plant at Oklahoma City. Hear about how wonderful that was, so we had property there in the city. We owned a home there. So we just moved back to Oklahoma City, and I worked for Douglas then as an inspector there till they shut down. And I told my wife, I said, dang, I've been around people so long, I want to get away from them. Let's go to the farm. So we bought a farm out northwest of Edmond there and moved out there in 46. Bought the farm in 45 and moved out there in 46.
How did the Depression affect you and your family?
Well, it was pretty bad. We lived there in the city in the 30s when they had that. Of course, I was working. I kept my job. I don't know. I was just lucky. I knew a lot of guys was smarter than me was out of work. But I was lucky enough to hold my job. Well, they cut me down about every 2 or 3 months. They said, we're going to cut you another $10. And finally got me down to $90 a month. And I said, hey, I ain't going to holler. They knew I wasn't too. And we just, wife, she's an old country girl, and she's pretty conservative. She'd borrow, we'd go buy a fresh pork ham or something for 11 cents a pound or something, and take it home and roast it, have meat, and then we'd buy bread for a nickel a loaf. We just cut down and lived, by golly.
Did you ever meet Alf Landon?
Just met him was all.
Yeah.
Yeah, never talked to him just a little while up there one time in Kansas. He come in there.
So you worked for Douglas during the war?
Yeah. Yeah, I was an inspector. I went down there and asked them what kind of jobs they had, and they said, I don't know what I'd been doing. I told them, I said, can you read blueprints? And I said, well, yeah, I can read blueprints. Well, how'd you like to have a job as an inspector? And I said, I've never been on an airplane in my life. They said, well, we'll learn you. So I went to work for them as an inspector then, out there at the Douglas plant. Worked the afternoon shift.
What kind of airplanes?
They made that old C-47, that old big, that old two-passenger, we called it big then, a twin-engine cargo plane. You know, they built them, man. They got to where they was every hour and 15 minutes they were running one out that south door completed there when they just a while before they shut it down. Man, they hired, brought in all them old country folks there and learned them to work, and they knew how to work. They run that plant.
Now, what did you inspect on the airplanes?
This was, well, I had different parts. I had the inside of the pilot and the wings and the cables that they worked to control their wings and everything like that. We inspected them.
Was there a big celebration when the war ended in Oklahoma City?
Wasn't very big, no, not as big. It's just everything, a lot of things just shut down. Had been working for them, you know.
Oh, I forgot to ask about Armistice Day, 1918. Was there a celebration when the war ended then?
Yeah, we shot a lot of shotguns. We just shot and raised the devil. The 9th, you know, to come out, the armistice was signed on the 9th. Oh, a little old town, you could hear shotguns now and then go off, but it was a mistake. And then the only word we'd get direct would be from that operator at the depot, the agent down there. He was a good friend of all of us, and he'd tell us to come in that was all a mistake, it wasn't signed. Well, then they didn't sign it till the 11th, and then everybody fired a shotgun then.
Were you in Arcadia at that time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were there many Germans around Arcadia?
Yeah, there were several Bohemians.
Uh,
Lots of old Pennsylvania. We called them, in the oil field, we called them old Pennsylvania Dutch. You know, there was a lot of them.
How were they treated during the war?
Just mighty good. They're just old hard-working folks. Yeah, we just didn't make any difference. Black folks, they were treated us alike too then, because everybody was do the best you can do.
Yep. So you moved to the farm in 1946.
Yeah, dairy farm. We dairied there 7 years and got tired of that. And we farm over on the creek east of us there, on Chisholm Creek, one of comes through Guthrie here. Used to, or it does yet, Chisholm Creek. And we bought that and sold our dairy farm, and then I just put that Bermuda grass and just run cattle over there for several years.
What kind of cattle did you run?
I run Angus.
Angus?
I used to buy baby calves, these dairies, lots of dairies over the country. You could buy them baby calves, and most of them got to have an Angus bull, because the Angus bull gets a little calf, and they wanted their Holsteins to come fresh and be good shape to give a lot of milk. And most of them got Angus bulls, and they had Angus calves, and I could buy them for $12 and $15 at 3 days old. I wouldn't take them under 3 days old, because I told them they had to have some of that colostrum milk so they'd live. And then I'd buy them, take them home, and we'd get that cafe and nipple buckets, and just feed them twice a day and get them to eating. First thing you know, they'd be ready to turn out on the grass. Most of them would be black. I started part of my herd. I went and contracted from several of them dairies to take all their calves that they wanted to sell, $20 a piece. Just take them as they come, little ones, big ones, bulls and heifers. And I'd get a good black heifer calf, I'd keep her, and that was part of my herd. Boy, they'd sure raise a calf. They was half Holstein.
So how big was your herd?
Well, at one time, when I sold out, I had 42 cows, bull. I'd have around 100 head. I would count my calves, and then I'd buy calves along and turn them out. I had 80 acres. I had 92 acres in the bottom there, and I put all that to Bermuda grass for about 35 acres. I kept 10 acres for alfalfa for feeding my cattle through the winter, and then I kept 25 acres. I just put it in wheat and just let them eat it off. In the spring, about the time you got good pasture, well then them old calves would show you could eat it then. I'd always have them calve in the fall of the year, and man, they'd do good on that. Get all the milk they could drink. I'd haul calves in. I'd sell a lot of calves down at the yards. Guy said, "Man, you're crazy putting that good alfalfa land to that dang Bermuda grass." And I said, "Well, that's a lazy man's crop, and that's what I want." Then after I got that pasture, that old grass, I'd have 100 head on there a lot of times. I had 2 good saddle horses. That old grass would still get up about that high, and God, I wished I had the pasture you've got. You can have it. You got some good land. It's just like any other crop. Better the land, the better it'll grow.
Yep. Bermuda would get what, 2 feet high?
Oh, it'd get up. Oh, it'd get up like that. It's a middle of
3 or 4.
Bermuda. It's that big Bermuda. I bought my roots up here northwest of Guthrie here, an old boy. I dug them and sold them out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I run cattle there, and we sold out in 40. Let's see, no, we sold out in 73. We come to Guthrie.
Moved to Guthrie. When you were a small boy, how'd you celebrate Christmas?
Oh, we generally just have things going on at school all the time, and we'd have different things. Always hang up our socks, and maybe we'd get an orange or an apple, and hard time, we'd get maybe a little sack of candy. Very few little toys. Of course, we had other things. We'd always had horses to fool with, and calves, and goats. I had a team of goats, and we lived in Edmond. I had a team of goats there. I drove all over that town. My dad made me a wagon, and I had two old boys I run with there, and we'd get in that old wagon and drive. There's Angora goats. You can drive them just like horses. I had a set of harnesses like horses. And I drove them goats 2 years. They let me keep them there at the hotel, and I sure done a lot of driving.
Well, did you haul stuff or just?
No, just us kids get in it and go places.
How about Halloween? What'd you do on Halloween?
Turn over toilets, back houses, we used to, many houses wasn't modern. Yeah, that's a big thing. By golly, we'd have a lot of fun doing that.
Ever get caught?
Yeah, we've been run off. If it was too rough, we wouldn't bother them. But then if it wasn't, well, we'd turn it over and take off. So we had to watch. So in later years, some of these guys would move their toilet, dig another hole right up just by their toilet there, and take the dirt and just put a thin scum of dirt over that hole that's been filled up with stuff, and just make it look smooth, and then they'd put their toilet up there, and guys would be run up there behind that to turn that toilet over, and god dang, you'd go in and crap that deep. I was lucky I never did get in one of them, but I knew several guys that did hit it.
What was the biggest holiday of the year?
I guess 4th of July we used to
4th
have.
of July?
Used to have a lot of fun there. Generally, they had this Bill Oder time. I had a little park down there, and he'd have a 4th of July celebration down there. Folks would come out there, come out on the train and stay at the hotel. The folks run the hotel there, and they'd go down there then and set up stands. And one old boy there had a shooting gallery. And my dad had bought me a little Stevens little Scout 22 rifle, single shot. It wasn't over that long, about 20 inches, barrel and all. And me and an old kid I run around with there, we shot enough shells through that thing, we could hit a rabbit in the eye out there 100 feet. And this guy asked my dad there one day, said, I want to put in a shooting gallery down there, and I need a few more guns, of anybody that have one that I could have. And he said, well, the boy's got one here, you can have it if you want it. You'll take good care of it and bring it back now. And he said, well, I'll do that. So he never seen me, or I didn't see him, but my dad let him have my rifle. And me and this old kid went down to that celebration that morning. Of course, the first thing we went to this shooting gallery, and he didn't know us. And there's my rifle, and we told him we wanted to shoot. And dang, we'd 3 shots for a nickel, and he'd get a cigar. Just bang, 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 we hit that bullseye. He said, "God dang, you old boys pretty good shots." I said, "Yeah, we shot a little." He didn't know that we'd shot that old gun for a long time. Finally, he asked us, we won 3 or 4 cigars apiece, and he asked us to quit. Said, "You boys are too good for me." He said, "You use up all of my stuff here that I give away." And said, "You better go on. You've done enough shooting now." So he wouldn't let us shoot anymore, and we never did tell him to do it.
You get your gun back?
My gun.
Did you get your gun back?
Yeah, he brought it back when they celebrated there a couple of days, and then he brought my gun back.
Mm-hmm.
But he never did see me, I don't think. He never did say anything about it. It probably made him mad if he knew that's my gun. I didn't tell him.
Ever hear any stories about the run? The old timers that made the run here?
No, not very many. No, it was, I guess communication was kind of, wasn't much around there. Things happened, but people didn't say much about it.
What about storms in this area? You know, floods, tornadoes?
Yeah, used to have, I don't know, we never did have a real twister right in any of these towns around here close, but we've had a lot of high winds and storms that blow a few houses down and trees down, do a lot of damage. Once in a while, I think they've had some little old twisters. I know one time out there out northwest Arcadia, about 2 miles, a colored man there had an 80-acre, and he just had a little old 2 or 3 room house on it. They was all down in the southwestern part of the place there. They said chopping cotton, and this storm come up, and they couldn't get to the house, so they just got under some trees down there, and it tore that house all to pieces. That twister hit that. And he had an old shed out there, just an old frame where they put straw over the top of it for a roof, and just kind of a shade. It never even bothered that, and it didn't even go. And it's about, oh, that thing wasn't more than about 100 yards from the house. Didn't do a thing to it. But they say you can. I've seen them where it tear a good house down, and an old shed sitting out there with no door on it and cracks that wide and just sitting there. It's a vacuum, and if it can't get a vacuum on it, it won't tear nothing up. They used to say they always raise the windows on the opposite side of the storm coming, and it wouldn't tear your house up. And I guess there's a lot of truth in that, because I've seen old sheds and things sitting around there and never bothered them to just tear a good house to pieces because it was tight.
What about floods?
What?
What about floods?
Yeah, old Deep Park used to get up down there a lot. Old Chisholm Creek, and I had that farm down there. That's one reason I put that out in the Moody Grass. I didn't want to, had to flood out wheat crops and the like. Yeah, the old creeks used to get out just, oh, that old Chisholm used to get out 4 or 5 times in the fall and about that many times in the spring in the rains.
Well, what haven't we talked about? Anything else that you want to discuss?
Well, I don't know.
We talked about the oil fields and
Yeah. Yeah, that.
anything else about the farm or ranching?
No, but I know there's lots of colored folks out there in that country, and they was so nice folks. Heck, we never associated with them, but we was with them, around them all the time, you know, and they were just real nice people. I mean, you get one to work for you. I mean, they'd really do you a day's work too. They were nice folks. A lot of them old colored folks, real old folks, couldn't read nor write, and they're the best old people in the world. If they was your friend, I mean, they'd stay with you. I know one time, Dad had an old colored man, an old fellow working for him there on his farm, and had a lane going down from his pastures into his barn lots there. And I had me a new pony, and I was trying him out to see if I could rope off of him, how he'd do. And it's been raining, and Dad he was bringing, this old colored man was bringing in some cattle there, and there was an old calf there about, maybe a couple 100 pounds, and I thought I'd try to rope him and see how that old pony would work. And he slipped. I didn't catch him, but the old calf slipped and kind of crippled himself. He went off limping, you know. God dang, that scared me. And the old man was standing out there, and I said, "Say, you won't tell Granddad what I done with you?" "No, sir, boy. Now listen here. What you tell me, just like cutting down a tree. It'll just lie there." He never did say nothing about it either.
On Saturdays, did a lot of people come to town in Arcadia?
Yeah. Everybody.
Tell me about Saturdays.
Yeah, you just couldn't. You wasn't nobody at home on Saturday anywhere. They'd all come to town, and the pool halls would be full of people, not spending any money. Maybe a lot of them didn't have no money to spend, but just loafing around, visiting with people, things like that. And if you want to see somebody, well, he'll be in town Saturday afternoon, you know. So sure enough, you can see him there.
Why did everybody come to town Saturday?
Well, they always done their trading on Saturday. they'd work all through the week, and then Saturday now an old colored boy, he'd work for you on Sunday, but you couldn't get him to work for you on Saturday afternoon no price. Now they like to have a Saturday off. They couldn't blame them.
What'd you do on Saturdays?
Generally just go to town and shoot the bull with the other kids. We didn't get into any mischief or anything, because we was under pretty strict discipline them days. But we'd have all the fun we wanted. Go down there in that lot, if anybody bring us mule in or anything, wanted him rode for 50 cents or $1, well, we'd ride him. I know one time there's an old boy come in there, he was related to somebody that lived there, and he was in a circus, and he'd ride these 3 horses, you know how they'd run them 3 by side, and they'd stand up on them, their legs on these 2 outer horses, you know, and go around the ring. That was quite a thing them days. And he was one of them riders. And he'd come down there one day, we was riding some little mule. By God, I'd like to ride one of them little mules. And he said, okay, we'll put a surcingle. No, he said, couldn't I put my saddle on one? He said, I never rode a surcingle. And he said, yeah, if you got your saddle. He said, well, I'll go home and get it. I'd just like to ride one of them. He said, all right, here he come with a big old stock saddle, and them little old mules wouldn't weigh more than 700 or 800. They said, okay, we'll put this saddle on. We got it on him and cinched it all up, and had the old mule eared down and holding him. Said, go ahead and get on him now, and tell me when to turn him loose. He got on him, and he looked down there, and all he could see was that mule's head over that saddle. He looked behind, just his tail, he just stepped down. He said, I wouldn't ride that mule for $15. He said, well, why? He said, I like to see what I'm riding, and I can't see nothing. And he wouldn't ride him, he took his saddle off.
Why were you riding the mules?
Huh?
Why were you riding the mules?
Just for fun of it. Maybe give you 50 cents if you could ride him.
Oh, what, that buck you off? Or?
Yeah, if he buck you off, well, you just lose your 50 cents. And after you rode him once, well, then they could ride him and learn him to ride. A lot of them rode him around and chased their cattle in, you know, or ride them to town. And yeah,
What about your dog? What kind of dog do you have?
I never had very much. We always had a dog or two, just plain old shepherd dogs, varmint dogs that tie into a wolf or anything they could find.
Many moonshiners around here?
I don't think there is now. There used to be. Used to be guys making whiskey all over the country. The old boy lived out 6 miles south down here. He made whiskey and sold it for years and years and years. He was a nice old boy in the law, and everybody knew he was in the business, but nobody bothered him. Yeah, there's.
Was he the biggest moonshiner around here?
He was one of the biggest at one time.
What was his name?
Martin, Lewis Martin. He was quite a guy. Best old boy in the world who'd do anything in the world for you. But you go up there and buy a quart of liquor, or half a gallon, whatever you wanted, well, you just buy it and get on out of there. There wasn't no fooling around there. Yeah, there was a lot of whiskey being made.
Well, I guess we have a good interview.
Talk about whiskey, we used to know. I used to be around the Indians a lot in the oil field, Pawhuska and Hominy and them places. And then I had a brother-in-law who was a half-breed Choctaw, and I was around the Indians a lot. And we knew several up in Tahlequah there. That was the old Cherokee capital, you know, still is, I guess. A lot of Indians up there. I got acquainted with several, and the wife and me used to go up there and visit with them. They had families lived there. There was 3 or 4 families that we'd go up there and visit with. We hadn't been up there in 2 or 3 years, and we was on a little vacation, so we drove up in that country and had hunting old Bill Evans. He was an old boy, knew that, had a wife. And he and his wife had separated, but said old Bill was still living in Tahlequah, so we went up there and inquiring about it. Well, we'd seen in the paper where he had been a deputy, and they'd had a shootout out there, out of town. They killed a couple of old boys that were trying to hijack the place or something. And Bill Evans was one of the deputies. So I was hunting him, and couldn't find her about him. I said, well, I'll just go to the sheriff's office and see if he's still a deputy. And went in there, and the sheriff was there, and he said, yeah, old Bill's our jailer now. Go down. And the jail sat on the corner of the square, you know, like it used to. And old Bill was the jailer. We went down, wife and me, and visited with him. Got ready to leave, and I said, Bill, I'd like to take a gallon of good whiskey home with me. Where could I get it? You know of any around here? He said, Ralph, we haven't got a bit right now. We've got 'em cleaned up. And an old man down there by Whitebead, where I was raised, he's made whiskey ever since I can remember, and nobody ever bothered him because he made good whiskey. He didn't make this. Said, we catch an old boy starting up with an oil barrel or something, so we knock him off before he gets started. And he said, right now, I just don't know of any whiskey being ready. He come in the other day and said he'd sold out and quit. He said, next time you're up, maybe there'll be a place I could tell you where you can buy you a gallon.
Okay, well, I want to thank you.
Well, I appreciate you calling me over here.
What's your address?
115 North Ash. I live right across the street here, there on the alley.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.